Hello, and welcome to another episode of Voices of CFMA, Construction Financial Management Association's podcast featuring conversations with industry leaders, sponsored by Old Republic Surety. I'm your host, Sal Marino, CFMA's Director of Communications and an Assistant Editor for CFMA Building Profits magazine. This month, we're going to change things up a bit. My guest is Bruce Orr, founder, CEO, and Chief Data Scientist at ProNovos. But what makes this episode different is that Bruce brought his own guest, Mr. Samuel W. Smith Jr. We talk life, history, DEI, and the construction industry. So, Bruce, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you give everyone a little bit of background about yourself?
Yes, so I'm Bruce Orr. I guess my background is I am a technology person. I've been doing this for longer than I care to admit. About 23 years now, and I've always focused on data. Even when data wasn't a thing, I kind of knew that we were going in this direction as a world. I got into construction data analytics about 8 years ago. I founded the company ProNovos, and ProNovos has evolved over time. We are a construction financial intelligence platform, and we essentially help contractors make good use of their data. Most of the data is underutilized, and that's what we do. My journey in construction has been it had a lot of ups and downs. You know, it's not an I listen, I before construction, I lived in Singapore, Southeast Asia, and I was an interim CFO, no, I'm sorry, CDO at Citibank. And it was high tech, it was very diverse. And I decided that it was time for me to come back to the United States. My relationships were waning. I had a special young lady in my life at the time who's now my wife. She was my girlfriend then, and I wanted to spend more time with her, and I needed to find something. She's a CFO of a pretty big developer, and I saw what she was doing, and one thing led to another. And I guess, gosh, 8 years ago, here I am.
Okay, great. And Sam, welcome to Voices of CFMA. Why don't you give everyone listening a little bit of background about yourself?
I would like to recall. It's been a lot of years. It takes a lot to recall. But born in Detroit, Michigan in 1944. My mom left there after 2 years and went to Chicago. So basically, that's where I started my bringing up, I guess you could say. And then I went through a period where my grandmother, who lived in Alabama, was ill, and I went to live with her to help her out during that period up until the time she passed, which was in 1959. And thanks to her, I was able to get out of Alabama alive, because coming from Chicago with a lot of the freedoms that were available in Chicago were not so in Alabama. And that adjustment period for me was quite difficult. Now, my grandmother didn't see it that way. In fact, she kept her switch available to try to help me out, to let me know that you're not in Chicago any longer, you're in Alabama. And
Sam, he doesn't know what a switch is. Do you know what a switch is, Sal?
Oh, I know what a switch
All
is.
right.
I grew up in an Italian family and I was not a prince, I can tell you that much.
did you have the ones that were braided?
No, not braided.
Oh no, no, that's when you're very special, naughty, that those are used. So one switch is not good enough. You get three very good ones, and you braid them together. It sort of reminds you of a whip, as my mom told me in later years, that she was only trying to save your life, because when I came from Chicago, uh, there were a lot more freedoms, of course, in
Mhm.
Chicago, and I was not used to what I was being subjected to in Alabama. My idiotic ways of trying to deal with that didn't really work with the norm. So got into some trouble, And because of the love for my grandmother who had nursed their babies, worked in their kitchens, worked at the school, did all of those things. But they did tell her that if you don't get him out of here, they're going to kill him. And that was because of several incidents that I had along the way. But I'm here today. I'm thankful for that. I'm blessed. I thank my grandmother. I always say my prayers because of that, you know. And so went back to Chicago and got drafted into the Army and went in 1965 to 68. Uh, since I had been involved in sort of the quasi movement in Alabama and what I had learned, I asked for an opportunity to go into the Air Force. So they said, well, you need to take a test in order to get that done. No problem. Let's do the test. I did okay on that. In fact, I did excellent on that. I have to pat myself on the back. So I was allowed to go into the Air Force. So I ended up spending 3.5 years in the Air Force. And then the last year I spent in Vietnam and was able to come back from Vietnam. I was not wrapped very tight when I returned. I didn't realize I wasn't wrapped very tight, but I came back and tried to sell life insurance for about a year. No, maybe 6 months. And Black people weren't buying life insurance. So it's like,
Okay.
oh, I'm going to leave $100,000 for my wife and the kids. No, I don't think so. No, we're not doing that, kind of thing. So that didn't pan out. I went and joined the Chicago Transit Authority in 1969 and ended up staying there for 25 years.
Oh,
And you retired from there.
And I retired. And I was sort of stressed out at the time that I retired because I didn't have this business acumen that I could rely upon. All I knew was just hard work. That's what
Right.
I'd grown up on. That's what I'd done in the military. You know, I was just putting my nose to the grindstone and trying to get it done. So uh, I set my goal to retire at 45. I retired at 49. And that was just the result of no business, no investments, none of that. I just worked. I did a lot of work. I remember one year, year and a half, I worked every day, 7 days a week. I worked in the office for the Chicago Transit Authority. I threw newspapers in the morning and I bussed tables on the weekend.
Why?
Because that was the only way I knew at the time to start gathering some monies to put back so I could make that 45.
Oh,
To
so
retire.
you weren't relying on the pension from completely relying on the pension from your job. You were just trying to save as much as possible. So that's why you were working.
Oh yeah,
all these
I was
jobs.
working because I did not feel at the time, that the pension was going to take me where I wanted to be.
Got it.
So I figured that I needed to make money.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about investing. No one had ever talked to me about that. I don't even think that word ever came up in my household ever, anytime, at any point. So I just knew that I had to work in order to make that happen. And I was fortunate enough to meet some people along the way. The guy that sold my mom the car, he liked me. And he said, oh, I need someone to do my paperwork for me. That kind of thing. He says, can you do that? I said, certainly. It's not a problem. Because he worked for the major dealer and then he also had another business on the side. So all of that paperwork, the selling of the cars, the money coming in, going to the bank. I said, but I can't do that because I have a job. And my job is split days off. It's sometimes I'm 3 to 11, sometimes I'm 5 to 1 p.m. or whatever. And he said, well, I can take care of that. That's not a problem. And so one day he says, meet me here in the evening time around 8 o'clock at the dealership. We left there and we went downtown Chicago and we went through a back alley to a freight elevator. and we came up on the mayor's floor.
The what floor?
The mayor.
Wow, okay.
Wow.
The mayor of Chicago.
Daily.
Okay, Mayor Daley. Okay.
And his lieutenant was there, and he just simply said to him, he said, Sam, here's my friend. I have some work that I would like for him to do for me, but he can't do it because he has split days off and he works all of these crazy hours and so forth. And so he says, Sam, if you're a friend of John, you're a friend of mine. I'm just listening. I'm just listening to all of this. And so he says, don't worry. He says, don't worry, John. It's good. I'll take care of it. So the job was, I considered the job to be a flunky job.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going and getting coffee and I'm
Yeah.
doing this little odds and ends. And I did that for a week. And then I went in and I called John back and I told him, I said, I said, I appreciate you getting me down here. I says, but I don't like this. He said, what do you mean you don't like it? Collect the money. I says, I don't like not doing
It's not challenging.
nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
No challenge to me. I said, I have a lot more to offer. So I says, I'm going to go in and I'm going to talk to Mr. Blah. So I go in and I tell him, and I said, sir, I says, I appreciate this opportunity and all. I says, but honestly, I feel, I was in charge of people when I was in the military, and I says, I can do so much more for this company and not being here getting coffee for you and these other people that are around you. And I says, I want to go out in the field and work, period. He says, well, where do you want to go? He says, it doesn't matter to me. And I said, I just want to be out there and be in the mix of everything. And so he arranged it. And I went out and he gave me a title of superintendent. And I went out and I did okay. And that's sort of the story of how it ended up. And then I took that step, and that led to other steps, and that led to other steps, and finally got to the point where I was the second in command of the entire bus transportation
Oh gosh.
in Chicago.
Wow. That's a
And some of the people that were dogging me out prior to that, they then worked for me.
I remember early in my career, someone said, watch how you treat people going up the ladder, because you might run into those same people coming down the ladder.
On the way down.
On the way down. And yeah.
But the household that I was raised in with my grandmother and so forth, I pride myself on my character. In treating people the right way. I want to be treated the right way, and that didn't always happen, but that didn't stop me from wanting to treat people that way. So after I got the position and I was in place, because I had 52 people under me, and I said to them, and I said, you may think that I have some sort of vendetta or ill feelings about how things have gone in the past. And I says, you don't have to worry about that with me. I says, because I'm not built like that. The only thing I want from you is to do your job.
Yeah.
If you do your job and you do it well, you're not going to have any problems with me.
Yeah, that's a play from Mandela's book. When he became president, he had, in some people's eyes, all the right to treat people poorly when he became president. And he said, no, we want to unite this country and we wanted to all do a good job. So sounds like, yeah, you took a page from Mandela's book.
And I didn't know anything about that, but again, it's just a part of how I was raised, and a big part of how I look at our society today. I say to people is that something that Martin said is that we would get to a point one day in our society that we would judge people by their character and not by the color of their skin. And so my whole idea is that I want to treat people with respect, and I wanted to be treated with respect. And that, as I told them, I said, then all I need for you is just to do your job. I'm not holding any kind of vendetta. That was stuff that was happening in the past. Now, on the flip side of that, if you don't do your job, there are consequences for that. I'm not the person that's going to look in the other direction because I realize that in assuming this position, it didn't matter the people that worked for me, that were black, white, Hispanic, across, it didn't matter. I said it's because people are looking at me and I'm concerned about how my performance looks.
Yeah, right.
I want to
Right.
excel.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate through the military that I've always been able to do well in my job. I've always been in charge of people, and I feel that I know how to treat people, and I know how people should be treated at the same time. So it was nothing for me. It's just a matter of explaining to them what they needed to understand about me. That if you do your job, there are not going to be any problems here. If you don't do your job, then you're going to find another place to work.
Yep. Bruce, how did you guys meet?
I met Sam at the gym, and I think that working out is a lifelong thing that I've been doing. It honestly, it just helps me stay sane. And I met Sam at the gym, and he had this shirt on. It says 75 and kicking. And this was probably, kicking up dust, 75 and kicking up dust. And I think you're turning 80 this year, right?
Yes.
And so when I got to know him, we just just had lots of conversations. It's always good to see him, and I could sit here, I could talk to him all day, but I want to make sure that we get to questions that you have.
No, absolutely. I actually wanted to go back to Sam, what you were talking about with the golden rule and sort of treating people the way you would like to be treated. And I wanted to get your take on this because you've been around a little bit longer, but I sort of feel like sometimes when I look around that society is angrier and we're a lot more on edge, and it just seems to be a general animosity that I've not seen before in my lifetime, and you've obviously experienced a little bit more. So I wanted to get your take on that.
I agree with your assessment in that it appears, and there's evidence to substantiate that we're living in a time where people are just so angry and wound up tight over the least little thing. There were issues back in the day, and we know where those issues came from, and I understand that. But today, it's people from all over, every walk of life. They seem to be walking around just wound up and ready to turn loose at any moment. And that's a different feeling from me, or for me, I should say. And growing up, in Chicago, with the gangs and that kind of stuff, and Chicago is bad even to this day. I understand that. But it's just there's like the road rage that we deal with. And I was leaving from Far Court here. It was like actually last year sometime. And Far Court going on to Peachtree Industrial, it's a very short arrow turn light. And so it was a kid in front of me. I didn't realize it was a kid at the time. And so the arrow came on for us to make our turn. And I just, like that. He turned around and gave me the biggest finger. And I looked and I said to myself, I was like, wow, what is going on in your day? It's not like I lean on the horn like that. I just be, say, hey, you're paying attention. And so I just thought to myself is that, wow, what kind of a society are we living in today that people are just wound so tight? A lot of this hatred and that kind of thing. I'm not getting that.
What do you think is fueling that?
I think that there are a lot of things that are fueling that. Economically, I feel that has a big impact. Is that it's getting tougher for people to make it. If you don't, if you are, okay, years ago, let's say when my dad got back from World War II and he went to work for General Motors, that kind of thing. And he could make a decent living. He wasn't rich, but he could make a decent living and take care of his family. Today, that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And in terms of the jobs that are available that are capable of allowing you to do that. Because if you worked at Ford or Dodge or those places back in the day, at one point, Detroit was considered one of the most prosperous cities in the country. And that was because of all of the car companies there, and people did well. But in 1976, my dad went to work. They told him, they said, you have 2 weeks. Your division is being shipped overseas. So what my dad did is that he became a barber up until the day that he died. But that's what he had to do. But the life that he was living at the time, he could no longer support that because of that change. And Detroit, it's just over that time, it's tried several times to come back under Dave Bing and a couple of other people, but it's still struggling to this day.
Yeah, I do agree with you. We are living in a society that is wound up, and I try to think about what's impacting that. I think that there are many things that are impacting it. And it's interesting because Sam and I was just talking before getting on this podcast, and we were kind of talking. He was telling me about how for his daughter, this is if you want to essentially do whatever you want to do, this is like the best time in history that you could do that. But so we have all these opportunities ahead of us, but we're just mad, We're like, and I gotta say, from a political perspective, it's just it seems like if we talk about politics, they should be a reflection, and honestly, they are a reflection of our society, and and if they're a reflection of our society, we need to think differently about who we put into office. Like these are people that we put into office, and I have little ones. I grew up thinking that I needed to respect the people in office and government, right? Now, I know that there are times, speaking as a black man, there are times where we have grown to distrust government, but for the most part, the government got my respect. And now I wouldn't tell my little people to disrespect them, but they're not a and as I say this, I know how it might come across, but they're not a model to look after. I'm the model. I should always be the model that I want them to look after. Um, but yeah, I think when you look at the politics, it's just a reflection of our society. Um, yeah, it's I'm forever the optimist, Sal. I think that we are going to get past this. I don't know what it will take, but I think conversations like this where we strive, even like at CFMA, when we launched the DE&I committee, it was not to create a wedge between anyone. It was to include and bring people together. And even doing that, there are a lot of people that are not happy about it, and I still believe that it's the right thing to do. And I'm so proud of CFMA, holding that torch. And the new CEO, Neil Shaw, he came on, and he's a big proponent of that. And I think we're going in the right direction in an industry that has not looked good in the eyes of DEI plus.
Right. And how do you think we reach those people who are unhappy with the DEI work or don't know why they're unhappy with the DEI work, but they just know that they are unhappy with it? How do we reach those people?
I think that the tough part about that is the same way I looked at when I was in the military and also when I worked for the Chicago Transit Authority, is that the leadership begins at the top.
Right.
If one person does not, persons does not set the standard, then you have chaos at the bottom because people are almost like little children, that are just running around loose, or a bunch of wild horses. And if they don't get direction, they just have a tendency just to go the way that they are feeling at the moment. And somebody has to step in and say, to give you an incident that happened with me at the authority. One day, one of the female employees came in to me and she says, "Mrs. Smith, can I ask you something?" "Ah, yeah, sure, absolutely." The men were leaving Hustler magazines in the drawers after they would hand out the runs and so forth like that. I says, "Really?" She says, she went and she got the magazines and she brought them to me. So I'm kind of old school. I'm not always as smooth as I should be, not very diplomatic. So I go in there, it's four men there. I reached in and I take them out and I put them in front of these, and I said to them, "How about if I take that and show that to your mother? How you think that your mom would like that?" I said, "This is a young lady that's working here in this environment with you. So listen, this is going to be real simple for you. I see these magazines again, you're fired, period.
Yeah.
You're out of here. That's not a part of who we are.
Yeah.
We're working as a unit, as a team." So getting back to the point originally, leadership is what can change all of what we're going through. But if leadership is flawed, if I had said, "Oh, girl, don't worry about that, just boys being boys," then the problem persists from that point.
Yeah.
I'm not doing her any justice. I'm not doing the company any justice. So, as I told the gentleman out at the Sugarloaf before, I said, "Sir, I'll make this real simple for you." I said, "If you will believe a lie that tells me that you will tell a lie, and in addition, it tells me that you can't be trusted."
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's pretty powerful. I cannot. There is so many things, Sal, I want to say on this podcast, and I'm just not going to say it because going back to what you said, you asked how can we reach those people that um, have that are opposed to diversity, equity, inclusion, not those that are neutral, but those that are on the other side. I think also it's a matter of getting to know them and them getting to know us and having conversations. Again, before this podcast, Sam and I, we were talking, and I told him that if I was going to be real, real talk is I've gotten way more opportunities from white people than I have, and I'll be specific, from white men than I have from anyone else. Like, I think that I have met so many people. I rarely use this word, and I'm going to use it now, blessed, but I've been like so blessed to have some people that gave me, I would say gave me, I'm not going to say gave me a chance, but they didn't care what other people thought. They saw someone that was right for the opportunity and extended it. And I'm thankful for that. And I believe that um, that it gave me an opportunity to get to know their affiliates too,
Right.
who were not black, as other white men. And I think that, like, I'm part of this this group, Vistage. It's a CEO peer group. In this peer group, I think it's 14 of us. There's one Hispanic lady and the rest are white men. And we sit around, we meet every month, and we meet for an entire day, and we talk about our business challenges. And I submit to you that we all are speaking one language, and that is, how do we progress? How do we become the best that we can be and provide opportunity to others. There's nothing about race, nothing about gender, nothing about sexual orientation. It's just all about, how do we become the best that we can be? And they're not, and I would say that going back to what I was saying about those that are opposed to it, there is something in their lives that made them be opposed to it. It's like their experience is something that created that. And the only way you can change that is by showing a little vulnerability and having some frank conversations that you're not trying to change anyone's mind. You just want to talk one human being to another. And I think that's how you change it. I'll say this last part. When we came up with, I don't know if it's a slogan or whatever, but I'm part of the DE&I committee. We came up with the listen, learn, lead, and that was a very thoughtful, well discussed term or slogan that we came up with. And I think it's classic. It's something that's going to be around for a long time. When we listen to other people and we learn from them, we can lead others. I think that when your heart is in the right place, you will listen and you will learn, and you're going to perpetuate those things that are just and good.
Sal, I was going to say is that for me, so Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, I'll be 80 in December. One of the things that I have noticed over the years is that when people are, how can I say, being in the military, and even though there were issues when I was in the military, I had an old sergeant early on that was from Mississippi, and he brought to Vietnam some of what he brought it from Mississippi. And we had issues when I was in Vietnam in 67 and 68. We had guys over there that were putting up Confederate flags. But here I am. I'm from Chicago. A big part of the unit, St. Louis, Philadelphia, New York, and so forth. And we said, no, we're not going to do that. Ain't happening here. And we had to have the major to come in and say, no, you got to take them down. You can't do that kind of thing. But the point that I'm getting to is that how are we like we are today? The people that are in charge of creating the rules and regulations and then making sure that they're carried out. And this is not against anybody in particular, but to say those 38 congressmen and people that are up there, there's a small percentage of them that have served in the military. I think that the military is a place that teaches you organization, teamwork, and discipline, which allows you to come out of there and go anywhere and work with any place with anybody. Now, if you have not had that experience, where you're a white man and I'm a black man, and I would say, no, you're going to work together for the common cause of this unit, period. And if you don't, you're out. That's not happening with so many of those individuals that are in charge of stuff. They've never been under those kinds of constraints. They've come from privileged backgrounds and so forth, where things were kind of handed to them, and they've never had to conform. They've always been able to do things kind of their way. But in the military, and there was the period of segregation in the military. Truman was the one that tried, and even though he changed that on paper, in real life, it was still happening. Yeah. But I'm still saying that in addition, it's like when I first moved in, this young kid I'm young. He's from Idaho, had never been around a black person. The only black person he ever seen was the ones who were on TV.
Okay.
We got ready to bunk that night. He's sitting there. So I said, Donald, aren't you going to get, yeah, I'm going to get dressed. Long story short, Donald was waiting to see if Sam had a tail. That's what he had grown up with. And Donald was the nicest person in the world. We became good friends. He just didn't know. But his circle had fed him that. And that's what he was coming into the world with. So again, if you don't, so he gets into the military and he meets me, and he meets other Black people, and he can say you can have butt heads on both sides of the coin. It's not about that. It's just that individual. But don't take it in group. He understood that, and we stayed in contact. And so to be able to, how do you reach those people? Again, I says it goes back to leadership. If they wanted to correct the problem, that's where you would begin doing that. Because if I'm the leader of you and you're a part of the men and you see me treat Sal like he's a brother, he's a team member, he eats at the table with me and so forth like that, you pretty much don't have any choice, because you know that if you don't, you're out. We don't have that so much anymore.
Yeah. No, you're right. Sam, so you're in Vietnam, you're putting your life on the line for your country, but you have people bringing in Confederate flags, and you have to trust these same people to have your back and to look out for you. And you also have to have their back and look out for them. How do you reconcile that?
Well, it's funny you say that, because a lot of my buddies looked at it this way. I have an M16 just like you do, and you got to get by me in order to do what it is you wanted to do. But again, I'll say this, because I want to be respectful of those individuals. If you've been raised like that all of your life, and then at 18, you're just thrown into the mix with Sam, and you've been fed garbage, for lack of a better word, all of these years. But to be able to sit down, and that's where the major came in. And that's why I want to go back to the leadership thing, is that when that problem is identified, you can't ignore it. It has to be addressed with no uncertainty that this is not allowed. We're not going to do this here. I don't know what you're going to do when you get back home, but we're not going to do this here, period. And you're under my command. If you don't follow my orders, guess what? You're not a part of the military. If you lack character, I'm a decent person, I would speak to you. But there's not a lot I can do with you, because you can't be trusted. So our leaders, we find our leaders from the church to politics. They're all across the board in what they're involved in, and the kinds of things that they will do, what they will accept, the lies that they will tell, just in order to maintain that position where they work, 173 days out of the year, and they get paid nice change and so forth. And they are willing to sacrifice right for that.
Right. There are, I think, so many things broken with our government, with our society right now, and there are a lot of good things too. I don't want to be doom and gloom. I think there's so much good in the world. And as I'm listening to Sam talk about leadership, I'm fortunate to be in a position where I'm looked at as a. I think that I often have to make a lot of hard decisions that are not popular decisions, and sometimes it costs the company profit. I think we all like money. Money isn't everything, but it's very important. And when I think of like my character, I think it's not for sale, because I know so many people that have swallowed the pill that created like people that I wouldn't want to have dinner with, and I don't want anything to do with them. And yet they were good people, they took the money and I again, money is so important. Money is, don't get me wrong, is so important, but I do not think that it's going to make you happy. Like if you have to exchange your character for money. I know a lot of unhappy wealthy people. And it's so funny too. Sam was telling me yesterday, and I know you've heard this as well, Sal, but health is wealth, right? So I know a lot of people, good people, they either, they prioritize the opportunity to be in power or make money over a lot of things. And what typically the easiest thing that you could do is put health aside. I don't need that. I'm going to focus on working hard and then family. I don't have to worry about that. And then you make these little decisions to prioritize things that are important. You don't know how important it is, but there's this book called The Slight Edge that I really love. But when you start to make these small decisions, it's easier to start to say, well, I'll make another decision that might be incongruent with who I am as, like my character, and I think that that it's evident. And I do not know why right now maybe because it's an election year, but I'm just kind of it's on my mind. It's like, geez, listen, the candidates that are going to be we got to cast votes for, man. It really, come on, like oh my God, I'm not going to go there, Sal, but I don't know why it's on my mind. Yesterday it was not, but something happened. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but
No, I definitely feel you on that. And you're just constantly inundated with the election news cycle, even this early in the process. And even when you try to avoid it, it's just there. And I have a 13-year-old who I want to be able to be involved in his future. Now I tell him, I'm like, don't get your sights set on having clean air to breathe when you're my age. Set his expectations low, and maybe he'll be pleasantly surprised. But it's one of those things that it's just constantly there, and it's impossible to get away from. But Bruce, I wanted to talk to you real quick because we're running out of time, but I wanted to get your take on my first introduction to you. I believe was an article you wrote called "Racism in Construction" on LinkedIn, and that was almost 4 years ago. And I kind of wanted to get your take on how has it progressed since you wrote that article in construction, in your view? Has it moved forward? Have we gone backward? Is it the same? Where do you think we stand now, having written that article 4 years ago, which we will also link in the comments down here too?
gosh, when I wrote this article, this was around the time George Floyd was murdered, and I wrote that as I reflected on my experience in the industry. I wanted to write something that was authentic to my experience. Since then, I think that I had been able to look at the world from a different vantage point, and I've also increased my capacity for understanding. There's been a lot of growth. What I have to say about the work that I've been doing on the DNI committee has forced me to grow. Like I don't know if I would have chosen this path in hindsight. And I say that because I wasn't looking to grow in this particular area, but I had to do some soul searching about my beliefs. And to give you an example, growing up, as a black boy to a black man, it wasn't always if someone was gay, it was like it wasn't that you would embrace them and understand, like, you know, you would make fun of them, right? And so um I got past that part. I now, like, the level of empathy that I have is I think is right where it needs to be. But when I got on this committee and I had to understand the path that LGBTQ went down and represent them too, in addition to me being a black man, the first thing I wanted to say was, whoa, wait a minute. You don't know my plight, right? Like, you got to listen, you know, like, we got a lot of things that we need to set right. And I was wanting to overlook where they came from. But when I started to listen to them and learn about their experience, I said, wow, you know, like, there's a lot of commonality between us. And when I started to talk to white men that had a different point of view, and they were open to discussing it in an authentic way, we were able to we were able to have a discussion. Sometimes those discussions didn't change anything, but I will submit to you that I bet that they don't forget those discussions. You know, I think that that the industry, the needle has moved, and it hasn't moved in a way. It hasn't moved as fast as I would like it to, but it has moved. You know, I saw this article that the courts are looking to undo some DNI stuff that has been around a while, and I, you know, I read this and I'm thinking, gosh, we're taking a huge step back. Not only that, corporations are also saying, you know, we don't have to, you know, be as there. We have less boxes to check now, you know, and I'm looking at that, and I'm like, man, we're going back. We're not making progress. But when I look at our society and I think about the work that we're doing, and specifically in construction, the tide is making things change. Like, we have like, it is construction 20 years from now is going to look completely different than it does today. And I think it's going to be so much better. We're going to have a workforce that is going to be inclusive, and we are going to have the opportunity to build some amazing things. We will hopefully correct the bad things we've done to our environment. Your 13-year-old, he might be able to, you know, breathe some clean air here. Yeah, I'm just that, you know, optimistic. And so you know, I guess I said all that to say that progress has been made. And honestly, Sal, like, I know you work for CFMA. I'm a member. I'm on the exec committee at CFMA, and I think that that you guys are doing we are doing some really good work for the industry. You know, my company supports construction, like contractors. And I first got into this looking at this as just an opportunity to make money. It is so much more than that now. It is so much more than that. I sit down with superintendents and project managers and laborers, and I hear their stories, and I think that it just gives me a lot of gratitude to have the vantage point to have conversations with them. So
Yeah. And as somebody who is in the business of data, how does data play a part, in your eyes at least, in pushing that needle forward for DEI in construction?
So, in my opinion, this is about the data says it all. When you're tracking the data, when you start looking at the people that you hire, you're tracking that. You're not just, you know, filing an application away. And, you know, when you're tracking that, when you're looking at your attrition, the people that are leaving, it tells a story. You know, and we did something I think we did something extremely smart when we first started the DEI task force. The very first thing we did is we said we had to create a business case. Like, and it really wasn't a business case for DEI. We said we want to try to understand what the data is going to tell us. And so we gather all this data and we try to present what the data said in an unbiased way. I was at a point, Sal, where if the data said that if you have an all-white company, you're going to be successful and you make more money. I was ready to present that to the officers at CFMA, and everyone else was ready. It didn't show that, man. The data showed us something completely different. And I think that that as long as we are able to measure the right things from an analytical perspective, and we report that in an unbiased way, it's going to the story is going to speak for itself as long as we don't have those in power and leadership that tries to put their spin on it. Just let the data talk for itself.
Excellent. I love that, right? Because data doesn't lie, right? Well, gentlemen, is there anything else you would like to say before we sign off on this episode?
Before we go, there's a question that I want to ask Sam. I like asking this question to people, especially those that have been around longer than I have. I think, man, it's been such a struggle for me, and I'm speaking from the standpoint of an entrepreneur and like in a technology startup. I am choosing to enter the storm. However, during that time, I sometimes think about why I do it. Like, am I doing this because I believe that I'm going to be a better person and I'm changing lives? Is the future going to be, that like should I stop and do something easy, or should I continue and embrace the storm? And I asked Sam, because he has lived a lot longer than I have, about his life. And Sam, I'm going to ask you the question. You're going to be 80 this year, and you said something to me yesterday. You said you're in the fourth quarter, and you said you don't know if the fourth quarter is the beginning.
The 2 minute or the
Or
2 minute warning.
The 2 minute warning, yeah, right. And I thought about that. I said, well, what hell, what quarter am I in? And so the question
You're
that
not in the fourth quarter.
well, the question that I asked Sam was, do you have more do you have better years ahead of you
Uh-huh.
or behind you? Like
Yes.
how do you view life?
Yeah.
Are the best years ahead of you or behind you?
One thing, as you get older, as opposed to like my daughter is 24, is that you just grow in the appreciation of the next day, that you're still here, you're still functioning, and you're going on. To attempt to project out and say, these are not my best years. Well, but for your age, they're not bad years because you're still here. Pretty much have my health and strength. I'm up on my feet. I'm able to come to the gym. I'm able to travel. I'm able to deal with my daughter. And that was my prayer when she was born at 56, is that let me be around.
Wait a minute. You had your daughter at what age?
56.
Holy crap. I'm 47, Sam. No, listen, I'm 47. We just had a newborn like less than a month ago, and I'm like, I'm too damn old. Like, I'm not. So wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And was always motivated to say that even for my wife, is to do whatever I can to maintain myself physically and mentally so that I don't become a burden on them. I want her to be able to grow into living her life. And I said to you is that these 22 years, there's been some bumps and bruises. She's a girl trying to date and all of that. but they have been absolutely, positively 190% the best 22 years of my life. It's absolutely the best. That I wouldn't turn in for anything. So I would hate for it to end, and I'm still living my life.
Yeah. I'm telling you,
Sure.
I believe that the gym is like, he's in the gym all the time. He's rowing. He's doing weights. What'd you do today?
It was light today. I
Oh, it
just
was
did a
light
little
today.
rowing today.
Oh, okay. So, hey, man, I think I look at him and that like that's what I aspire to be. So,
But I was going to say something, if I could sneak this part of it in. What you were talking about earlier is that we are so subject to the people that run the country controlling the narrative.
hmm.
It's like the guy that was waiting to see if I had a tail. All of those individuals, I could sit and talk to them and say, you know, you're not my problem. You are not my problem, and I'm not your problem. The problem is coming from someplace else. If you and I come together, perhaps we could change the narrative. But they've got people thinking that, oh, now Bruce is my problem.
Yeah.
So I'm focusing on Bruce, and I'm not looking at where the real problem is coming from. So there's this concentrated effort, I do believe, to keep people confused to that point, which inhibits the process that we could enjoy. And we're getting better, but it's a struggle, because to reach all of those individuals, you're always running into these roadblocks and so forth. But bottom line, I always say this: can't give in and you can't give up.
Can't give in, you can't give up. I love it.
Can't give in, can't give up. Is there a better place to stop now than that? Listen, guys, I want to thank you both for being on the podcast with me. This has been absolutely fantastic. And I'm so glad, Sam, that we could get you onto the podcast with Bruce.
No, Sal, thanks for the invitation and thanks for the flexibility. I think having Sam on is way more interesting than just talking to me. So I appreciate you being flexible.
Absolutely. Thank you again to both of you. And thank you all for listening to another episode of Voices of CFMA, sponsored by Old Republic Surety. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it on social media. And if you're interested in learning more about the Construction Financial Management Association, check out CFMA.org. Once again, I'm your host, Sal Marino, and I will see everyone back here next month. Thanks.